call to order the working session February 4th, 2016 at 5 p.m. Dr. Orr, do we have any changes to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay, number 3, efficient resource management. Mr. Hawkinsmith, that is Thomas Nelson High School construction bids.
Yes, ma'am. Members of the board, we've had a slight change in plans that we were made aware of just a couple of days ago. Slight delay in scheduling. We heard from Stephen with Studio Creamer that Greg Dunbar, he's the gentleman that signs off on all this paperwork in Frankfurt, suffered an injury back in December and is only working a couple of days a week, so he's a little behind in signing documents. Well, we've since gotten our approvals for Thomas Nelson's project to proceed to bidding. We just didn't get it in time to advertise, open bids, recommend contractors to you guys in time for the regular session a week from next Tuesday. So what we'll be doing is bringing those bids to you on the night of March 3rd at the work session, the first work session in March. We'll be opening bids on Tuesday the 1st, reviewing those, and if everything is as we hope, then we'll be bringing to you recommendations 2 days later on the 3rd. And also on that night, we'll ask you to approve those bids, revise the BG1 for Thomas Nelson High School. That's part of the process. We will also revise the BG1 for the ELC. You approved those bids last month. We're doing those together. We delayed the ELC's revised BG1 because the other piece we're going to do on March 3rd is sell bonds for both of those projects together. We pay less fees that way. It just worked out well for us. So we'll approve one bond. We'll approve 2 BG1s that night, 2 revised BG1s. We'll hopefully approve those. We will recommend to you the bidders for the Thomas Nelson Phase 3 project that night. We'll ask you to adopt a resolution authorizing the Finance Corporation to sell bonds. And then, of course, later on that evening, the Finance Corporation, which is you folks, will go into session and approve a separate resolution. On a separate note, back to the ELC for just a minute. We do have a pre-construction meeting for that project next Thursday at 11 o'clock, and we're excited to get moving with that project. We've got some staff that'll be there. Of course, all the contractors will be present, architects, construction managers, etc. So we'll keep you posted regularly as to the progress of that project. But I just thought you might be interested in that construction meeting for that one next Thursday. Any questions on any of the issues for the work session on March 3rd?
Okay, none. D on bond sale?
I sort of lumped all that in together.
I thought so, but
I'm
I thought
sorry.
I'd give you the opportunity to.
Sort of.
Yes.
Got carried
Okay.
away there.
You got carried away.
I did. I apologize. I will tell you one thing that's not on the list that I didn't mention
Okay.
that I almost forgot. At your February meeting, you all authorized the refinancing of a couple of bond issues. I think Mr. Orr maybe shared some of that information with you. But officially, the results are in. We got documents today. He forwarded them today. Our net interest rate for those projects dropped from 3 3/4% on one issue and 3.95 on another to collectively 2.28 on those issues. And between those two projects, the remaining 12 years or so, that's going to generate net savings to the district of $502,819 over the remaining 12 years, about $40,000 a year roughly. So that's some good news.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, sir. All right.
Okay, our next issue is E, that's Mr. Beck, school makeup days for 2015-16 calendar.
As you know, we've missed 3 additional days since we last met to take a look at Makeup Day. During the last session, you authorized us to use February 15th as a Makeup Day for the single day that we have missed since then. We've had 3 snow days, 1 best day that we will not have to make up. What you have before you is a decision paper on the recommendation to currently use the following days. We have January 20th, 21st, and 22nd as the days we need to make up. So what the proposal is that we use February 12th, March 11th, and May 20th currently. That will still get students out on May 20th. We won't have to go the upcoming week if we use those 3 days. All 3 days are designated as our makeup days too.
A couple of those days, I'll point out that February 12th and May 20th. February 12th is a full work day for all staff, already designated, and March 20th was already designated as a half work day for all staff. So what we'll wind up doing is we'll document the work either after the 20th or we'll do that along the way, but we've done that a couple of years in the past to kind of make up for when we've done this very thing, used a staff work day for a makeup day for students. So we'll get the work in and it'll still work out just fine, be a little more documentation on our part, but it preserves the expectations that everybody would have for the length of their work year and income, that sort of thing. But this kind of keeps us, like Tim said, on track for graduation. And that week following, and every now and then, Philip Mattingly pulls that little matchbox out of his pocket with a weather bug in it and tells me that we've got more snow coming. So, and a lot of times he's right. So we don't know that that's the end of the story, but at least it catches us up to where we are for now.
And then, of course, we always have best days that potentially could play into and be part of the factor too. So.
Potentially, yes. And we'll tell you how best day number 1 went and how we're going to make some adjustments based on that, but also kind of clarify some misperceptions probably that were out there as a result of that first day that kind of feed into the makeup day thing as well. So
How many best days can you have?
we can have up to 10.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I thought I'd ask that.
It's part of the program.
Yeah.
It's never been our goal, or my goal certainly, to use anywhere near that, because obviously we're better if kids are sitting in their desks, but to kind of do it in moderation as we need.
Okay.
This January 20th to and makeup day, February 12th, and put us any kind of shortage on bus drivers or nothing? I mean, this is kind of a late notice,
Well,
a quick notice.
it is quick, but we actually, right after we got out for this snow, we started talking with our executive staff about the possibility of recommending this day to go this way. So I think that expectation is already out there to some degree. Bus shortage, we're living on the razor's edge at this point anyway. But I don't think we'll have a problem there.
The farm machinery show is going on that day, and I know some kids are planning that, so that's something else we might want to think about.
Okay.
Somebody's already asked me, they plan on making that day up, some parents have, and I told them it's a possibility. So.
Okay. I'll follow up with Todd, but I don't think we'll be in any worse shape on that day than we would be on any other.
Okay.
I've already seen a few comments circulating around on Facebook from staff saying that they think the 12th will probably be a makeup day. So I think the word's getting around unofficially anyway until we made the decision.
Yeah, we did deliberately pass that on to staff. I don't ever want to commit you guys in advance of a decision, but we try to at least let people know to reserve their thinking about those days that way.
Okay.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve these makeup days?
Motion.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Jackie made the motion. Mr. Pate, second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passed. Okay, thank you. Okay, our fourth section, safe and caring environment, Frisky continuation plan. Mr. Beck?
What I'd like to do is bring to your attention something you'll be seeing at the next board meeting. It is the Frisky continuation programs that will be coming to you. They cycle through every 2 years. I just want to give you a brief bullet point, touch base with you on what you're going to be seeing from those. The plans are due March 1st to KDE, so they'll need to be approved at the February board meeting. What you'll be seeing is the operations information, the inventory of what each of the Frisky centers has, who the advisory council membership are, and what their current programs are that they're utilizing. They'll also have a needs assessment that they've already completed, and that's going to be running through the actual continuation program. Then from that needs assessment, each program will develop action components, both for their core programs and any optional programs we're additionally doing. One that comes to mind that you've probably heard about several times this year is the Green Dot program. That would be considered under the optional programs. Then you'll also have the assurances that need to be signed at every level. The school level, that would be the advisory council, who's on the advisory council for each of the Frisky centers we have. The school SPDM, which includes the principal. And then lastly, you guys will sign off on the assurances from the school board for that. And right now, those plans are currently being developed. The only thing that has really thrown a wrinkle in it was the possibility of that 9% cut in Frisky funding. So they're making some quick adjustments to put themselves in a really good position for the next 2 years. They just don't want to make assumptions and then have to readjust budgets. Any questions?
We'll get those uploaded. I know Tim's been in communication with them about what day they needed to have it up and ready so that we could do that, so you'd have a good chance to review them and ask questions. So,
And that'll be at our next meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, letter B, best day update. That would be Miss Ann Marie Williams. Oh, and Miss Karen.
We're a team.
Yes.
Okay, we survived our first best day, and I feel like it was a complete success. But of course, that's one perspective, one person's opinion. So it was important for us to gain feedback from all our stakeholders. So we created a survey for parents, and then we created one for staff. And that includes bus drivers, cafeteria staff, everybody classified and certified. So we're going to share some data with you. The first question on both surveys dealt with notification. Were you aware it was a best day? Did you receive it in a timely manner? And as you can see, overall, 98 and 98% of both stakeholders felt like it was successful. A few of the things as far as communication, just noting on the TV or the television stations, when it was put out there, it said Nelson County closed, and a lot of people just stopped there. And they made the recommendation that maybe we just put best day before we put the word closed, so they don't just flip their TVs off and those kinds of things. So we're going to work on the media of how we can change that just a little bit so it doesn't come up Nelson County schools closed, so parents are a little bit more aware about that. But that's a small percentage, 2%. So I thought that was very good. Our next thing that we were talking about is the communication. We asked parents if you had to notify or get in touch with the teacher about work, and you can see over here 77% said no, but the 23% did. And if you look at the communication type, we asked teachers, when you had to communicate with a parent, how was that communicated? And you can see the breakdown between email, was it phone call, face-to-face, or Google Classroom, or phone text. And you can see pretty much most of it was by email there. Just a small percentage as far as Google Classroom, face-to-face. We did have several of the elementary schools. I just touched base with the principals, and we had a few walk-ins. Just one was a parent said, their child said they didn't receive a best day folder, but it was in his locker, so they picked that up. Another one was said, our computer's not working at home, can we go to the lab? So they went in there for a few minutes and come out to do the online work. So overall, the communication piece, as far as the staff is concerned, I thought was very good. Some of the parents did say something about, when teachers were accessible as far as times, as far as workload. When they come home from work, then they would have some work to do with their children, and they wouldn't know how to do it. And of course, staff had already left because maybe it was 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. And so basically we've talked about how that 3-day period is for that type of thing, and we might need to do a better job of communicating that to parents, that it doesn't all have to be completed on that day and they can still receive assistance when they return to school. If you look at the next piece, did they have any communication challenges? Was help received? You can see that 61%. It was received, everything went well. As far as communication, did you have any trouble from the staff end of communicating with your students? And you can see overall that was no. Communication was very clear between the teacher and the student or the parent. So I think we did a good job of setting up the emails and getting that contact information out there in the folder so they would know how to communicate. If you move on to the next one, talk a little bit about assignments. We talked about the question stated, did you feel that the work was appropriate as far as assignments on the parent end? And you can see 48% said yes, 52% said no. A lot of the comments there was it was either too much work, or we actually had parents saying, well, I don't think this is comparable to a school day's work, those kinds of things. So it was a win-win kind of thing. Some were pleased, some, said that it wasn't enough, it wasn't equal to a school day. As far as the work being returned, you can see there that 81% said that they received that work back at a 75% rate, 17% at that 50% rate, which I was very pleased about that because I think I shared with Dr. Orr, I was afraid like middle school and high school, I know my little elementary kids always want to do their work, but middle school and high school would try it just a little bit saying, are they really going to expect me to do the work or not? How are they going to hold me accountable for the work? So I was very pleased to see that overall 75% of the work was returned. And it seemed to be quality work that was returned. So I think it's a good baseline to start out with. As far as teacher time, we talked a little bit there about the agendas. Of course, we have to have an accountability measure for staff that day. So of course, we have a sign-in sheet. When you arrive at your school, you sign in. But also, we had to have an agenda for the day, just so we know that, they are working. It may be PLCs and different things that they're working on that day. So I asked the question about, did you feel like it was helpful to your students and to your instruction? Planned activity, and overall, the agendas they felt like that was presented by the principals, 90% were effective for them, and 10% did not. Some of the frequent suggestions, we did have 578 returned from parents and 187 returned from teachers. Like I said, some said too much work. The other ones, as far as the parent, was unclear assignment. Some were still a little unsure of how to log in. Logins and passwords were to be in that folder, so I don't know if kids maybe pulled out the assignments rather quickly and maybe lost that page with the logins or passwords. Positive comments, we received 36. And out of using more best days, 23 reported that they would like to do that. So I thought that was a good, overall, as far as the suggestions, like I said, too much work, that was mostly, I think, at the high school level that we received that on. As far as teacher comments, some frequent suggestions were they wanted more time to work in their classroom. Like I said, we sort of created agendas. Some of those were not necessarily staff meetings or faculty meetings, but maybe they asked them to meet in PLCs, maybe look over common assessments, those kinds of things, and they felt like they needed a little bit more time for planning and catch up in the classroom. The other ones, we had a percentage that wanted to work from home rather than to come in, but I feel like too, there has to be some type of accountability. I'm not sure how parents would feel about that or how we could truly hold staff accountable for the work that was done at home. And then the last one, as far as comments, we had 3 there for the positive comments from teachers. Like I said, all in all, I felt like the data reflected as successful. It's the first time for the district, it's the first time for parents. And I feel like with anything, it was a test, it's a baseline. From here, I feel like we can take back suggestions. We're going to share this data with the principals, talk about that staff agenda for the day on best days. How can we tweak that and make that a little bit more staff friendly? And then actually look at the work and make sure that we're training our students on the technology. If we're using technology for online, we can't expect the parents to teach the technology too. So to make sure that maybe we practice getting on those sites and doing those things in the classroom before we send the work home. And just make sure that the work, it's not too much, but it also keeps them busy in the day and continues the learning. We didn't want best day work to be busy work. It wasn't meant to be that. It wasn't really meant to be a review of content. It was something to continue our learning because it was a lost day of instruction. So I think we just need to look at the quality of work that we're sending home. And I feel like with principals working with their staff on that we can make those changes, and our best day data will even go higher.
You know, the thing I think with the best days, the non-traditional instruction that are interesting, of course, from a parent's perspective, I mean, you still got kids in the school, I've got kids in the school. I mean, do we, as parents, do we think there should be lots of work that they're bringing home, something to keep them busy for 7.5 hours of a school day, because they're in school for 7.5 hours of the day? That's not really the case. It's thinking about what's appropriate for them to be working on. Every day that I get a chance to pick up Daniel, you have any homework tonight, buddy? No, don't have any homework. I already took care of it in class. I mean, he's pretty consistent about that. He had things to do on that best day. And they were things that were applicable. It was reading pieces. He worked on it. And so normal school days, he may or may not have homework. Best days, he may or may not have work to do. It just kind of depends upon, you know, what the teachers have assigned. So I think that's one thing as parents we probably have to keep in mind. The too much work or the not enough work, you know, it's that balance piece there. The work from home piece, the teacher comment, I know there are some districts that take that approach, but there is the challenge of the perception. And, you know, it's one of those that while we're not doing it this year, we may not do it next year. It could be something several years down the road that we start doing as we, as a district, get better at these best days and about the collaboration efforts and the technology that we're using.
One of the things that I think is relevant for me on that is we've said we don't want to overuse best days. We don't want to have a large number of them be used that way. I think, I hate it when I lose my train of thought, but I just did. It kind of goes, I think it goes back to the comment from parents came more frequently than it did from staff to use more best days, and that wasn't just an endorsement of, yeah, let's keep doing this, but it was actually, some of them were pretty specific to say, hey, wait a minute, we're doing best day on a Monday when the roads are pretty clear. What happened, why didn't we do best days when it was really snowy, and it'd be okay for the staff to stay home? And so, as Anne Marie said, I think one of the important things there is a measure of accountability and transparency with the taxpayer to say, this day is costing you money, and this is how we're ensuring that you get bang for the buck, that it's money well spent. And I think as we get more accustomed to it, people will begin to see that we're bringing all that together by only having best days. At least so far, this is the way we're still thinking. We're only doing it on days when it really is quite safe for people to get to work. There may be some slick patches, there may be some ice, and there was that Monday in neighborhoods, but we got people all over the community that got up on not just the best day, but the snow days prior to that and drove into their places of business. We're not going to do that for teachers to that extent, but I felt really confident that those days, that best day that we did call, it was not a severe problem for people to get in.
And the thing that we always combat is, I know where I live. I mean, the roads were pretty much clear all 3 of those days that we were out. But I live on Bloomfield Road,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's one of the first roads that will get cleared off. And I know a lot of people just look outside their house and the road looks clear. There's no ice, there's no snow. Why are we not having school, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing that we have to remember, probably one of the people that knows it best, is you get back a mile off of Bloomfield Road, and there's some spots you probably don't even want to drive on when it's nice and sunny and 80 degrees, because it's still a road that can be a little bit rough.
Well, and we should say that the Nelson County Roads Department did a phenomenal job of getting the roads cleared. I mean, when you look at how things even looked on as early as Saturday, I was glad that we had some spots that gave us a chance to do a best day on Monday. But really, the roads were in fantastic shape on Monday.
I had the chance to talk to one of the high school teachers about a week or so after the best day. Something that struck me as I was asking, in their opinion, how did it go? They shared that there was a student of theirs who, just the regular classroom, sometimes it just didn't quite work out for them. They'd have difficulties. They'd had some behavior issues here or there. They shared that this student, I forget what, it was through Remind Me, texting. So neither one knew who the other's real cell phone number was, but they were still able to communicate back and forth. And that this student, on that best day, they were communicating back to the teacher, asking questions about the assignment. They would work on some, they'd ask another question. So for that student there, that best day was a tremendous experience for them. I mean, they kind of hit their little niche of how they like to learn, so.
I think with high school did really great, because I know around my neighborhood, they all want to go sleigh riding. They didn't want to play no school books, they want to be out there in their four-wheeler sleigh riding. And so I think you did good with the high school kids.
I want to ask something. Okay, just looking at that list, and I was looking at the computer at home before I came, and my little mind just kept going. What do people consider too much work? Now, wait a minute, I'm not through.
Sorry.
That's okay. Too much work, I can't fathom what somebody considers too much work. I'm sorry. When you've already been out of school 2 or 3 days. So what do they consider too much work? And another thing I'm concerned about is not exactly unclear assignment, but the parent being able to help the student. I am concerned about that because parents that don't, I don't want to sound like this, but I'm going to put it out there. Parents that don't either have educational experience or parents that are not there or those kind of circumstances. Now, how do we make it clear? How do we make it clearer for those parents? Those students, because some of those students are not home because they're with grandparents, and older grandparents don't know, not me, of course, but some grandparents don't quite get it. So how are we going to make that more positive for those people?
Well, I think as far as the unclear assignments, as a teacher, you have to make sure that the children are being trained how to access the technology, that they understand the content. And basically, the assignments that were to go home in the folder was not supposed to be new learning. So it's not something they haven't seen before, but not necessarily something we've covered 15 times this year, like a math times test or something like that. It's supposed to be building upon the learning that they would be working on normally in January when we took this best day. And everybody is going to have a level of difficulty, even students should have a level of difficulty in the classroom with the teacher that's a trained professional. We want that to be a challenge. But I feel like we have to do a better job educating the children how to know what resources they can go to for help. There's a lot of things as far as like on Lexia and Dreambox that they have tools built into the program that children can learn how to use to help them get the answer. And then if it's reading material that they do not understand, then highlight those parts in the text. When you go back, if you can understand those things, then there would be a teacher there to help you, but also teaching them how to use context clues or how to use a dictionary to look up those words when they're not at school to be able to do that. I think that's our job as an educator because, learning takes place not only in the classroom 6 hours a day, but it has to take place at home too. And this is just a way that we're actually assigning what they're learning at home, but we just have to do a better job as educators making sure that they know what's expected and they know what resources they can use. And if they've tried all those resources and they still can't figure out the answer, then we as the professionals, you can come back to school and we have 3 days that we're going to sit down and work with you on those things.
Well, in the big scheme of things, that's 49 out of 578 parents. While we don't want any of it to really be unclear, that's 1 out of 12 people. So, if you think about in a classroom of 24 students, that'd be 2 students that are having something that they're not really sure about in the assignment. The other piece I think in this too is being able to contact the teachers. There was a student on Twitter on that day who posted something along the lines of, once again, my teachers at Thomas Nelson aren't telling me how to do this. And of course, I saw that, and I actually did a reply back to it. I said, well, have you called your teachers, because they're there from 9 to 11, 8 to 11? Forget what hour, in the morning and 1 to 3 in the afternoon. I never heard another thing from the student after that, but maybe they didn't pay attention, or maybe they're like, oh, that's right, I can call. That's one thing that we've got to make sure we continue to promote and communicate well. And I think we did a pretty good job of it based upon some of that earlier data of teachers that were contacted, how were they contacted, knowing that students could reach out, or mom or dad could reach out. Again, the challenge being in the evenings, like you already acknowledged. But
Would there be a way that, I don't know, because, you all have children in the school system and we don't, and I wish that this was something that was in place when my kids were in school, because I think it's a wonderful thing. Is there a way that we could see like what a best day folder would look like? Like, can we like see a sample of one? Just so we can see what they're saying.
And as far as your comment about too much work, I think that's the opinion of the person. That could be, a parent, they may have filled it out for their child. This is a lot of work for me today, complaining it's a snow day, I should be able to go sledding or whatever. But it also could be the parent as like, wow, they do cover a lot in a day. My child's still working. I went to work and I come home and they're still working, but they don't know necessarily what took place. They just are adding up the hours or the minutes kind of thing. So I think it's just one person's opinion. If you slack off, say if that was high school or elementary or whatever, and we start giving less work, then I feel like we'd have more complain that we're not giving enough work. Is that all you cover in a school day? And so it's
But
going to...
people aren't really comparing this to a school day, are they?
In some of the comments.
if they use the phrase "too much work," I would think that they're comparing that to what their kids bring home on a normal day.
That's what I'm saying, maybe if they brought home, maybe they usually don't bring home anything, and all of a sudden they've got work to do, and they go, you got work?
Reading that, most of the comments, and that's what these came through, was just kind of an open comment box, and that's why it's not just that we had only 36 parents who thought it was a good idea. It was in the part where they said, what's wrong? They said something like, we love it. So I want to make sure that's clear. But the context on the too much work was mostly about parents who had younger children who were in child care somewhere, whether it was in a commercial facility with grandparents or family or neighbor, and the parents were out all day, and when they came home that evening, a lot of
They
that
had to
work
do
was
it.
still sitting, and that's not, I think for a lot of people, that wasn't part of their routine, that wasn't part of their expectation for when they would get home that evening, and so it did affect some folks that way.
Well,
I think
if you work and come home and your kids come home, you're there at the table doing homework anyway. I mean,
Well, maybe
they-
sometimes
that
yes,
level,
sometimes
though.
no.
they're just never,
Um,
they're just getting started in first, second, third,
Well,
fourth
But
grade.
maybe some of the students may not come home with homework, and so
Yeah.
it's just something that they're
That's
just
what I'm
not
saying. Maybe they didn't have
Or
homework.
not, they may not be coming home
Yeah,
with
they may not
homework.
come home with it anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing that, on the too much work, and this is just an example from Jessamine County, who was one of the pilot districts last year. AP students in AP classes at the high school, what they discovered as they started doing the same thing we're doing with the feedback is they heard from the AP students that not only did they have their normal project work that they may have been working on anyway, then all of a sudden the teacher got afraid and said, well, I need to give them some more work for that non-traditional instruction day, so they piled even more extra work on top of them. I mean, there could be cases here where maybe we have some teachers that they were afraid, well, I need to make sure that they have meaningful work, so maybe they did give them a little bit of extra work this first time around. I think there's going to be some of that kind of, as time goes on and we have another best day or two, whether it's this year or next year, that people will get into more of a routine of it's, regardless of whether we're in school or on a best day, that it's the work that we do. And it's never expected to be too much or too little. It is what it is.
More like enrichment in a program. For certain classes, it would be, if they couldn't, in my mind, if the teacher didn't want to move ahead, then they could assign enrichment items or work for them to do. So everybody could be, particularly in like AP classes and something where you would want them to exceed their minimum of whatever.
The thing that I think we've got to think about with best days is this is not traditional classroom instructional type days. It's not going to be something where, and that sounds like the well duh statement, because of course they're not in school. But it's one of those things where first time we've done this, I believe, and so it's new to people. It looks different. They're unsure of how it plays out. That's like the picture of Daniel there. I mean, literally, he went to try and log in on that Sunday, and then all of a sudden it hit him, oh, that's right, it resets Sunday night, so I really can't log in until tomorrow morning, or else it'll get counted on this past week instead of the future week, which is when it needed to be counted. So some of it, I think, is just that learning curve, not only for our students and our parents, but even, I'm sure, with teachers as well.
Well, I think it was a success according to the data. I mean, I agree with you all. Thank you all very much for all y'all's hard work and all the teachers' hard work. But it was a success at our house because our son wants more of the best days. So that's what his vote is. He can vote. But no, it's, and plus kids think they do too much in class anyway. I mean, now. Yeah. So you got to take what you all know when you incorporate it. So thank you all.
We have an overall rating, if you'll look here, parents approved the best day use. You can see 91%, and staff 73%. And the other 27% was just a few changes, and those were some of the suggestions that they put in their comments that I feel like could change that percentage as well as far as staff is concerned.
So the 27% though, change needed, what kind of changes?
That was like the agenda for the day. They'd have more time in their work in their classrooms, less more, maybe at the PLC meetings.
Some of the comments we saw on the other screen.
Yes. And then just some next steps, how are we going to use the feedback? And we've just made some lists as far as the media. We're going to talk to the media about how it's reported out. Just value that on-site work. Also look at the 3-day assignment return and make sure that we're taking advantage of that when kids come back and they have trouble or they have struggled with something, that we work with them one-on-one and help them get through that. Reflection on the student work as far as the volume of the work, having teacher autonomy just a little bit more, making sure it's relevant, that we collaborate with child care providers as well, and we look at, our options as far as what staff can do on those days.
There's a couple more, I'm sorry.
Okay. I think I mentioned them. I read them from my list there, so.
One of the things that I noticed, you saw there was it said teacher autonomy, poor work, and additional communication. There were interesting comments coming back from staff who said, this is not, the work I got back from students was not the quality that I expect. So internally, and I just as soon it stayed here in this room, but internally my response to that was, well, what do you normally do when they bring back stuff that's not to your expectation? Hand it back to them, have them do it over again. I mean, whatever it is that you normally do, it was just kind of funny to me that so many of the comments and questions were there only because it wasn't the normal thing that we do. If they had been in the classroom, they would know what to do and how to answer these questions. Some of the additional communication is part of that, because even teachers said, well, apparently kids didn't know what to do. So you now, and we're going to talk with principals about this on Tuesday and ask them to follow up with their staff. But teachers, I think, can take some ownership. We definitely set some guidelines for them and how they should set things up. But now it's my hope that we all learn and that teachers will take some things and say, okay, the thing I was thinking about a minute ago is, if I want to tell somebody how to do something in Excel, I can say in a few words what I know needs to happen. And if it's somebody that's familiar with Excel, they know what I'm talking about. But if it's somebody that doesn't, then what I really have to do is go step by step. Click import, click or insert, click graph, click pie graph, click 2D versus 3D. And so I think we just have to get ourselves in a different frame of mind when we're setting up that best day folder, because everybody's a little out of their comfort zone when they're not in that normal setting.
Well, and the comment, phrase you just used there, because it's not like the normal day. If we treat it like it's not like the normal day, we will get work back that doesn't meet our expectation. We will have students that don't finish the work even. I mean, eventually we will hopefully get to that point where regardless of whether it's a best day or a traditional instruction day, it flows the same way. And I'll use a phrase, Dave, that one of our friends a couple counties over has used before, and you might know their name after I say it. Whenever they were a pilot for NTI, both they and the superintendent said NTI is going to be an incubator for the way we change instruction in our district. You know who that is, don't you? Yeah. It's going to be an incubator, and so by the things that they did with non-traditional instruction, it then started changing the way the traditional day was instructed and the types of learning activities that students had, so that the NTI day, it didn't matter whether the kid was in school or at home, on the beach, in a library, wherever they were for that day, they were used to how the day would work.
One more thing I'll mention that was kind of funny. Back in March, we did kind of a test day, and I asked teachers to track how many teachers did you give, and how many of your classes did you give homework, and then how much of that homework that was assigned came back in on time. And it was interesting. We asked the same questions in this data from the staff, and in the non-traditional instructional day, more teachers assigned homework to go home in the best day folder, and more of it came back from kids in a timely fashion than on a regular school day. So in some ways, we really surpassed what we do on a typical day in terms of sending kids home with work and having them come back with it on time. So to me, again, another way of looking at it to say, if you get 100% of teachers, and most of those staff responses were teachers, it was clear from the context of the comments, you get 100% of teachers to say it was good, even if we want a few changes here and there, that's a hands in the air, yay, yay, jubilee dance. So it's exciting. It's a good step in the right direction.
And just speaking from a parent, I have children in all 3 levels, and I thought the work was very appropriate. Management as far as time, all in the same household, sharing computers and that kind of thing, it worked very nice. And teachers held them accountable, which was the second thing as a parent. I would say, okay, if we spend time on the work, are you going to hold my children accountable? And they did. And they received feedback. And actually, I got to observe a lesson with Colonel Lucchese this week, and she was continuing a best day lesson that went home in the folder in her classroom here and connected it back to her best day work. It was awesome. It was amazing. One of the finest I've ever seen.
Love her.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Brown with the math data.
Let me set you up with the way the graph is put together, so we're all clear on that. What you'll see here, we'll do 3 grades at a time, so you're going to look at 2 bars. So this is kindergarten fall and kindergarten winter. What we want is the green. This is the percent of students that are proficient or distinguished. The yellow is the apprentice, and the red is the novice. So that's what we're going to look at, and I'll talk you through it as we go. So when you look at kindergarten, you see that 55% of the kindergarten students in the fall administration was the last week of August through about the middle of September. So it was a 4-week window there. So that's how they scored in the fall. In the winter, we began the first day of December and we closed the window. We gave them a week in January to make up anything that was missed during December because of holiday things and all that going on at schools. It gets a little hard to schedule everything, but you see that the proficient and distinguished increased to 66% here during the winter. The apprentice dropped to 19% and the novice dropped to 15%. So this is exactly what we want to see between each 2 bars that we talk about. So if we move to first grade, in the fall, 67% were proficient distinguished, 69 in the winter, 19 and 19, so we flatlined there. And then we had 13% novice, and it dropped to 12. So all in all, that's a good showing there. In second grade, we have 63% that were proficient and distinguished in the fall, and that dropped a little bit to 52%. Our apprentice were 21, that increased to 29, and then 16% novice in the fall, and that increased a little bit to 19. So we have some work to do right there in second grade, but overall, kindergarten and first grade are doing exactly what we need to be done.
So before you go to the next slide, then, so between the fall map assessment and the winter map assessment, was the difficulty of the material on the same level, or did it change from one to another? And I asked that because at one time we did the fall one was last year's grade level, and then the winter one was the current grade level. Does it make
You're ringing bells, but
Yeah.
it's been a long time since we set that up.
So like the second graders, were they assessed in the fall on second grade level math and then also in the winter on second grade level math?
They're second grade all the way
Okay.
around.
And
Okay.
and that may have been before we moved to math.
It may have been before we moved to
I think
math.
that's old.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Stop.
Terra Nova. We used to get a test called Terra Nova in that group of tests,
And they-
and they do that.
I mean, and why I'm asking, of course, to see that drop in the second grade there, in the past, we would have seen that whenever we were testing first grade math at the fall, but second grade math at the winter for those second
I think that
graders.
was a different system.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I can share that at second grade, at the beginning though, it won't explain the fall to winter drop, but at second grade, it will no longer read the test. Like at K1, there is a reader that comes on and reads, and then these are your choices. But once you get to second grade, regardless, it's not read to you at that point. So sometimes that's why we see the big discrepancy from first grade to second.
Okay.
Any other questions on kindergarten through second? Okay, let's move on to reading. Here you see that 58% and 58%, we flatlined there, 29 to 27, so we made a little bit of a gain there. And then here, we have 1 point gain in the kindergarten in reading. In reading in first grade, 62% to 53%, 25% apprentice up to 27, and then 13% novice up to 20. In second grade, we have 56%, and that went up to 60. We have a 16% here down to 14, and 28 to 25%. So this is exactly what we want to happen with the novice, but we've got some work to do here in apprentice and the upper levels. And that is at second grade, and that's in reading.
Map testing is adaptive, correct? Meaning that as the students are able to answer questions, it continues to adapt to
It does.
harder questions until
Yes.
the kid
Yes.
kind of plateaus.
Yes.
Okay.
Other
I don't like
questions?
that.
What-
That just,
Okay. What don't you like?
well, I'm
That-
sorry I
that's
said
good.
that again, I'm
That's good
sorry.
stuff. No, it's okay.
No.
That's good stuff. Well, what it does is it gives us a much more accurate view. A lot of times with the paper pencil stuff that we would have done in the past, or the non-adaptive testing that we would have done in the past, you might have a child who would hit material that was too difficult early on in the process, and so they quit and they don't do anything else. Or on the other side of it, you might have a kid that's doing really well and can answer things really easily, kind of get bored, take his time, tune in, tune out, and it not be reflective of what he can really do. With the adaptive testing like this, what happens is if they miss 2 or 3 questions in a row, then the complexity drops back. It keeps them engaged, but it also gives us a finer read on where the kids' abilities actually are for that content, for that skill set. So the technology is really very solid in helping us pinpoint exactly what the kids' deficiencies are or where their strengths are. So it is a good thing. So if we can dispel concerns, we're glad to try to do that.
Is this a typical of what you would see? I mean, is this a typical
Year.
Yeah.
Yes, it mirrors last year to some extent, but this data that we're going to see tonight is just a little bit better than it was at this point last year. Kids get all their basic skills, as you know, and first learn to read, and they're so excited in kindergarten. And then when they start moving into the grades, it gets more difficult and it's not new anymore. And so there are a lot of factors that start to play as they start going up. This data is not bad. If we had large drops, but look at above the 50th percentile. I mean, you know, you have every single one of those that's above 50% of the kids are scoring where we need them to score. So while I don't want to see any flat lines and I don't want to see any backward movement either, but that's going to happen. We're all human and they are too, and they'll be okay.
So something I just heard you say, these are numbers that are somewhat similar in the neighborhood of last year. So this year's second graders, last year as first graders, may have had some similar looking results as what this year's first graders have.
Yes, you are correct.
Okay.
But what I was referring to is if we put last year's test results up against these are just a tad better than they were last year for the same grade level.
And I'm glad to hear that. I'm not too concerned. I'm concerned whenever you get concerned, I guess, if that makes sense. Because we've made so many strides over the past couple of years. I mean, the success that we had across the whole district pretty much with our test scores last year. And then when you look at this, it's like, well, things seem kind of flat. Does this mean that we're not going to continue to maintain these successes? So if I'm hearing that you're not worried, then I'm not going to worry.
I'm not worried.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, in my mind, what I was thinking though, if those students were last year's, okay, and they moved, I'm just looking at the gap between the yellow and the, what is that, brown, or whatever that is. Yeah, red, oh, that's red. Anyway, I'm just looking at that gap. I'm thinking if the kids did as well as as comparable to last year's, and then they moved to the next grade level, and I see this, do you know where I'm going with this?
I know where you think you're going.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. Do you know? But you know where I'm going with this.
Well, I'm glad you do, because she didn't know.
Because I'm thinking if they did that well last year and they moved on and
would
that's
expect them
not
to do
as
better,
good,
and-
I'm
yeah.
expecting better instead of
But you
that.
can understand though, I mean, I think there's a difference in the level of work when you advance
Right.
that grade.
That's what I'm saying. That's,
So, yeah.
because you're telling me that they're red 2 and then they're not red 2. And they've got to figure it out themselves. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
But let's look at second grade. Second grade usually gives me trouble. I have lots of trouble with second grade. But when I see that 50 or 60% of the kids in this district, total, aggregate, all together, 60% are proficient and distinguished, I want to jump up and down and shout. That's wonderful. I mean, we've got some kids down here that we need to work with. But you're going to have that anywhere, and that's what makes teaching fun, is getting those red things down, getting them to close.
Yeah, but I was particularly I wasn't looking at second grade, I was looking at that first grade.
Okay.
That's what I was looking
Let's
at.
talk about first grade. What do you want to know?
Okay, well, you just answered it. I mean, because let's say my child was in that second grade group, and if I looked at that, I said, oh, my, was that one of my children in that 27 or 20? Because last year in kindergarten, he, she, or whatever,
Was a superstar.
was superstar, yes. And then he, she, or whatever, goes to first grade, and I'm thinking, oh, what happened?
the
Now
skills-
you know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me equate that to something that you went through, that I went through. So my blood work comes back and it's not good. Those are symptoms. And so we've got to find out what it is and fix it, okay? My synthroid levels came back, or my thyroid levels came back low. So now I'm taking a yellow pill and I'm up and everything's great. That's what these tests are for. We've got to diagnose what it is that these kids don't know. So that's why this adaptive test is so strong. it gives us exactly in a list those symptoms. And so then it's my job as the teacher and his job as the doctor to get my body well. It's my job as the teacher to look at those symptoms and fix that in that classroom. A prime example of that would be if I were teaching second grade and I have a list of these symptoms, I'm going to apply some learning to every one of those symptoms for those kids, or a lot of those symptoms during best day. Okay, I know what's wrong here, so I need to put in his folders these things. I know what's wrong here, I need to put in his folder these things. And that's going to cause those red and yellows to go down. So that's why this adaptive test is the best choice, is because it gives us that primary focus that we can laser in on and know what it is that's wrong and fix it.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Is there one more test cycle
Yes.
before the K-Prep?
Yes.
When is that next test cycle?
March 15th. It's for about a month. But we may play with that a little bit and do grades 3 through 5, and then after spring break do 1 and 2. So we'll have a completely sterile testing environment when we do K-Prep, if they're testing also, because they don't test K-Prep.
Right.
So Anne Marie brought with her a grand idea, and I've been working with Matt to see if we can do that. And right now, all systems are go that we probably can split that spring window into 2. But we'll have one more reading
Okay.
before we do K-Prep, and we'll be able to tell you.
Well, and maybe one of the things that, and it goes back to why I said, if you're not worried, I won't be worried. We've got 2 data elements here. It's hard to get an idea of where they're going to land in the last 2 weeks of school during K-Prep with 2 data elements. That third one will give us a little bit better idea. If we saw a downward trend and continue to see a downward trend, meaning that we're losing proficient, distinguished, then the little red flags go off. But if we see steady, and then all of a sudden we see that the number of proficient, distinguished starts spiking in that third cycle, that gives us positive feelings that that's the way it's going to happen on K-Prep as well.
Yes, and winter is always the dip. Okay, so this one is always, in this district, across the board, the winter is always the dip, and it's the same across the state. The MAP winter assessment always dips a little. Ours doesn't dip much. We're gaining on most of them, so that's why I'm happy about this.
Testing itself probably causes that dip.
Pardon?
The testing itself, because it could, stretch the student and
Well, the sun doesn't shine
Yeah.
here, so there you go.
it causes that.
Scarlett Ann's already thinking about Santa Claus.
Yeah, you can't help that. They're little ones.
Okay, this is grades 3 through 5, and this is math. And you see that in 3rd grade, we had in the fall 56% in novice, 34 apprentice, and then 11% proficient distinguished. That has increased. We grew to 25 here. We have dropped the novice significantly and gained an apprentice. This is the area that we need to work on the hardest, is right here. We're doing a good job of decreasing novice, not well enough, but we've made a big gain. But now we have a group of students here that we've got to work particularly hard on to move them on up. But they made a nice gain up here. 4th grade, 42% in the fall were novice, and we've dropped that to 26%. 38 down to 30, and we've gained from 19 to 44 in the 4th grade. And then in the 5th grade, we dropped novice 24 to 18%. We've gained, we have a large group here, 48% in the apprentice, and then at the top levels of proficient distinguished, 28. We've gained over here. It's over doubled, yeah. And then we've dropped this by 18%, and then here we've made a drop there also. So this is what, with the exception of this little piece right here, but that's not a bad thing. These two. We didn't gain hardly as much here, but it's okay. It's okay.
But
We're doing okay.
we're shutting from the bottom into every upper one. This one here is much more pronounced than I think the last set of slides. We've probably got about 300 students per grade.
It's really.
350?
Somewhere around that.
So-
Around 320.
Okay, so if we do that, then in third grade in the fall, there were about 35 kids who were distinguished or proficient. And then in the wintertime, it was probably about 80 kids. I mean, that's a huge jump in the number of students that we were able to push up and help achieve into that proficient distinguished. And the last one especially, going from about 90 kids in proficient distinguished to 175, roughly. I mean, those are huge jumps there in my book. So this one here makes me not worry at all.
Give each another one.
Well, again, it's because I can see very distinct differences here. What you're saying about the K1 and 2, though, makes sense. The reason why we see things a little bit closer, although they were better than last year.
Okay, we have a large group here in third grade reading, 52% novice, we've dropped that to 30. 24% apprentice to 27, but that, again, that's those kids moving up. And then here you have a great gain, 24% proficient distinguished, and it's up to 43%. Here we started with 40%, it's down to 27. We started with 30, it's down to 27. And then our proficient distinguished grew 30 to 40, 46. Here we have 27, we dropped to 23, 25 we flatlined, but we gained here 47 to 53. So all in all, reading is moving along well.
You know, I'm going to jump back. I'm sorry to add too much text, but jump back to something that Kim said about she was kind of cautiously optimistic about the direction this data is taking. I look at this and I have a couple of thoughts. Obviously, we want to see the red just disappear, and we'd love to see the yellow disappear as well as we work through this. But there's a part of me that says, oh man, we're cautiously optimistic, but optimistic. And then my thought is, what if our staff sees the progress and they kind of take a collective sigh of relief? And we don't want that to happen. It might be helpful for you guys to know this is not the only way staff see the data. And I appreciate that when classroom teachers look at these data, they're not looking at bar graphs like this. They're looking at a kid's name and whether it's red, green, or yellow. They're looking at the kid's name and whether it's red, green, or yellow. And then because of that adaptive process, they get a list of skill sets that they need to work on to go directly to support that kid. So it keeps, I really appreciate that we are getting more and more data focused in the district. I think we're getting more and more responsive to it. That's sometimes the gap is between looking at data and then doing something about it. And we're making progress toward that. We're not done, but we're making progress.
This is 6th through 8th grade math. You see that in the 6th grade in the fall, we had 31% novice. We've dropped to 16%. We had 53% apprentice, and we've dropped to 47. 16% proficient distinguished, and we've gained up to 37%. In 7th grade, we have gained a little bit of ground from 23 to 21. We had 46% down to 42, and then here we've gained again in proficient distinguished 31 to 36. In the 8th grade, our novice is about the same. We got a little bit of traction there. We went from 38 to 34% in apprentice, and then in distinguished we have 36 to 41%. So the gains here are not as large as I would like to see, but we still have good large numbers of students who are in proficient distinguished.
The depth of mathematics just changes so much at the middle school.
Yes, it does. But they've made some good gains.
That's Benjamin and Daniel.
That's 6th grade.
Yeah.
Okay, here we have reading. Again, they've done very well with dropping novice, 36 to 27%. Here we flatlined, but we've gained here 40 to 49%. In 7th grade, we have dropped that 28 to 24, and then 28 to 26, and again we've gained here 45 to 50 in proficient distinguished. And then in the 8th grade, 24 to 22, 32 to 28, and then gained in proficient and distinguished from 44 to 49. Now, I am optimistic, and it is a cautious optimism. One of the other things that I want you to know is that when they see students, they see this data in the schools, if they have sixth grade for the winter, let's say, and they have 27% there, they also have a number of students, and they know who they are, and they identify those kids, and they know what to do to look at their skill sets and to strengthen those. They can design the instruction to fit whatever that the child needs. So we have come a long way in being able to identify students who are having issues and or students who are making great gains, and then prescribing what it is that they need, whether it be an intervention or an extension, to help them to grow as a student.
And all elementary schools have at least, some have more, but at least 30 minutes of intervention time daily built into their schedule, and they try to apply all the MAP skills. We focus on MAP skills during that 30-minute intervention. So,
Questions or concerns?
I have a question.
okay.
When you say 30 minutes of intervention, if you've got, I've always wondered how the teacher handles that, because if not all the classroom needs the same thing, how does the teacher address that issue to a certain student as opposed to Lulu over here might not know what 2 + 2 is, but Fred knows what a noun or verb, I'm just doing that, you know. So how does she address that?
Through flexible grouping, math report takes their score and breaks it down by strand in both reading and math. And like if Lulu was 3, there's probably somebody else that was a 3 or a 5. So the 3 and 5 would be this group. And MAP actually prints out the skills like she talked about. It's a prescription. It says they need to work on these things, and this is their instructional level, and this is how you can enrich them. And then whoever scored like a 7 or 8, they're in another small group. And basically most of our schools are dividing up those kids to the music teacher, PE teacher, classified staff, anybody and everybody in their building. So those groups are really, really small. So Lulu gets the attention she needs during that 30 minutes on the skills that she needs according to this assessment.
And
And they rotate between reading and math.
Yeah, because not all kids learn, I mean, are in the same pot.
I think
There's a
Cox's Creek.
deficiency some, yeah.
Cox's Creek is the only one doing just reading right now, but all the other schools are on a 3-week rotation that they work 3 weeks on reading and then 3 weeks on math. So we're keeping both things up in the air.
And I'll tell you something that you guys may have seen when you've been in the buildings that maybe process it a little bit differently. I remember very clearly every teacher classroom I was ever in, and I can just about tell you the seat I sat in, because when we walked in on the first day of school, those desks were lined up and they were in rows, and they stayed in rows from the first day of the school year to the last day of the school year, and you stayed in the same spot. If you go into our elementary classrooms now, I am absolutely amazed at the talent and the skill that our teachers show when they'll have 4 kids working over here, 5 kids working over here, and 4 or 5 kids over here, and 2 or 3 kids sitting at a horseshoe table with them. And they are, it's like conducting an orchestra, because they will be working with this group of kids right in front of them that are kind of grouped like Anne Marie was describing, but they are also watching and listening. Sometimes they've got another adult in there helping them, and sometimes they don't. But they're watching and listening and keeping track of what's going on in those other groups. It is a thing of beauty to see that happen, but that's how they do it. And if you, honest to goodness, it's hard to believe that that can happen until you go and watch it happen in those classrooms over and over again. And it's a skill set that we've got some folks that are really amazing. I don't know if I doubt I could do it, but they not only are doing that, but I see that, and we're trying to pull it up. We were at Nelson County earlier this week, and this is the sort of thing that we talked about. We're trying to pull that up into the secondary schools to get those teachers, and it's a little more difficult because they tend to be more traditional and more traditionally tied to content as opposed to skills development. But it's starting to eke its way up into the secondary schools as well. But that's kind of our frontier that we're still working on. But it's pretty cool to watch. Even a dumb secondary guy like me gets excited when I see that kind of thing going on in the classroom. It's very cool.
It is.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay. Next is student and stakeholder engagement. A guest comment? No? Okay. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? No.
We don't need a
We
closed
don't
session.
have anything. Goodbye, everybody.